Hey guys, how's it going? So I wanted to do one final reading update before I dive into what I'm going to be reading for ShakeTube. First off, I have been working on primarily a reread of Frank Herbert's 1965 science fiction classic, Dune. I have only about 60 pages left. And yeah, this is my really old tattered old copy. I mentioned once in an old video that it took me 2 years to read this the first time I read it because I was such a inconsistent and slow reader at the time. But I reinforced it with tape, so it should hold together for a while yet. And yeah, I'm not going to waste everyone's time by doing a synopsis of this, because I think most of the people watching my channel will know what Dune is about if they haven't already read it. And I've been meaning to reread this for a long time, for the same reason that I just said, because when I first read it, I read it rather haphazardly. I would read like 10 pages and then not read anything for months, and then read another 30 pages, and then didn't read it for like several months. And so I didn't process it as one narrative whole. I sort of got little bits and pieces of it, and so don't have very strong impressions of the reading experience of it. But this time, I'm obviously reading it all the way through, and I'm loving returning to it. There clearly are a lot of details that I missed the first time, and so it's been great to kind of get those details in the story. The main thing that has struck me about Dune upon rereading it is the fact that I think you basically can figure out how it's going to end right from the beginning. You maybe don't know how the very end of the novel is going to end at the beginning, but so it's divided into three sections. The first one is just called Dune, the second one is called Muad'Dib, and the third is called The Prophet. And I think not far into each of the three sections, you pretty much get the sense of how that section is going to end. And so there's a strong feeling of inevitability about everything that happens in Dune, especially since the main character obtains prescient abilities to see into the future. So you would think that that might kill some of the suspense, but it absolutely doesn't. Actually, what strikes me most is just how engrossed the novel keeps you, despite the fact that you can probably see how it's going to end anyway. And I think in large part that's because what's important isn't necessarily the way it ends, but how it affects everyone when it ends in that way. So Paul, the main character, and his mother, Jessica, especially struggle a lot with dealing with how the ending turns out, because the ending of this novel is ostensibly defeating evil, but you also see that another evil has sort of been brought into the world, and Paul and Jessica both know this, and so what's interesting about the novel throughout is just how the characters struggle with their fate and what's going to happen, and how they ultimately realize that struggling against this fate is futile. And I think that's what makes Dune engrossing and moving. When I kind of thought about that for making this video, actually what's hit me, and what I've been wondering about for a long time, and what I actually finally looked up, was the name Atreides, the main character, Paul Atreides. Atreides is related to Atreus, the House of Atreus, which is a very important family in Greek mythology. Agamemnon and Menelaus are both of the House of Atreus, and the way you refer to a person who is a descendant of Atreus is as an Atreides. The Dune really relates to Greek mythology, and Greek tragedy in particular in that sense, which I just thought was really neat. I actually also listened to an interview between Frank Herbert and a literature professor that's on YouTube. I'll leave a link to it, where the professor at one point mentions how Atreides is such a name that's steeped in Greek mythology, and I don't think they ever managed to actually get to talking about Dune's relationship to Greek mythology, but I think that there's probably an academic article to be written about that, about its relation to Greek mythology and Greek tragedy. So yeah, anyway, I'm loving Dune. I can't wait to finish it. Next is a work of nonfiction, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs: A New History of a Lost World by Steve Brusatte. This is a title that kind of speaks for itself. But so basically, this is a book about the dinosaurs, and just an overall history of the dinosaurs. Steve Brusatte is a well known paleontologist. He's discovered, I think, about 15 new species of dinosaurs himself, which is pretty crazy because I looked him up. He's only 34 years old. So he's seems like kind of a prodigy in that sense. But yeah, he's a really good writer. He's doing a great job with this book so far. I'm only through the first chapter, and he really does have a good way of creating narrative. I was skeptical when I found out that this book was written by, a paleontologist, because I tend to be skeptical of scientists' writing abilities, because a lot of scientists are bad writers despite being brilliant scientists. But he's a good writer, and so I'm really enjoying this. So far, all I've gotten through is the very early history of the dinosaurs, the animals that were around before the dinosaurs, the synapsids, who were these animals that were actually a bit closer to mammals, but then went extinct after the Permian extinction. And then after the Permian extinction, the dinosaurs started to arise, and there emerged species of very small dinosaurs called dinosauromorphs, which technically aren't dinosaurs, but really they're pretty much the same thing. So that's all I've gotten through. I'm loving this. I loved dinosaurs as a child, and until I was about 13 or 14, I was dead set on becoming a paleontologist when I grew up. And reading this book is kind of making me remember why. Not that I'm regretting my life decisions, but I'm remembering why I was so into dinosaurs and into the idea of being a paleontologist. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to set this aside while ShakeTube is going on, because I just don't think I'll have the time to read it while reading a bunch of Shakespeare plays and Marjorie Garber's book, and also I'm going to be reading parts of Harold Bloom's book, so I just don't think I'll have the time for it. But after ShakeTube, I will pick it back up and finish it. And finally, lastly, I have been poking through 1001 Paintings You Must See Before You Die by Stephen Farthing. And I grabbed this at the Ames Public Library, and it's obviously huge, and again, a pretty self-explanatory title, but basically this just has paintings. We'll have the paintings up here, and then a brief sort of essay on it by an art scholar. And the essay usually includes some biographical information about the artist who did it, and then a little bit of analysis of the painting itself. And basically the way I've been reading this, I just kind of paged through it and looked through all of the paintings in it that I was really attracted to, and I've actually been copying and pasting the paintings I've really loved into a Word document, just to have them and save them, and I write down the artist's name and the year and the title of the painting, and I also usually transcribe an excerpt of the essay, of the parts of the essay that I find the most interesting. And yeah, so it's just been, I have been wanting to get more into painting, have a bit more of a knowledge of art, and so this has kind of been my way of giving myself a little bit of a crash course. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm just going to read the parts about the paintings that I've liked the most. Liking getting a little crash course in art like that, and I'm just gonna delve into what artists I find most interesting and take my relationship with Western art from there. So yeah, that's what I've been reading. I'm gonna keep plugging away at the 1001 paintings. I still haven't transcribed all of the passages from all of the paintings I liked. I'm gonna finish Dune this week, and unfortunately I can't continue with the dinosaur book, but I will finish it eventually. And yeah, anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Bye!